Good evening. It is 7 o'clock on Wednesday, February 15th. We will call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Meridian Library District. Welcome, everyone. We will begin tonight with a need to amend our agenda that is provided to us. We have been notified that we have an opportunity to access capital funding up to $500,000 through the ICFL. It's of course very important to us with our projects, but we are under a tight deadline to be able to get that in motion and will not be able to wait for our next meeting. So I would make a motion to add to the agenda approval of a letter of intent to submit a grant request for the to the Idaho Commission for Libraries for facilities and capital improvement funding. We would add that as item number 3A.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jeff. Further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Right. Before we get started tonight, I would just mention for benefit of folks in the audience or listening online that we are aware that a petition has been filed with the Ada County Commissioners to dissolve the library district. At this time, the library district does not have any comment on the petition. We will be in attendance, have representation at that meeting tomorrow, although there is not going to be any comment from the public at that meeting. And we will have more to say after we learn more at the meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. and the item is scheduled for 10 a.m. on that meeting. Okay, so we will go ahead and begin with item number 1 on our agenda, the consent agenda. We have the regular meeting minutes from January 18th and the administrative assistant job description. Both of these items were included in our packet. Consent agenda items are voted on with one motion without discussion. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda. Sorry.
Thank you, Jeff.
I second.
Thank you. Too slow, Laura. Thank you, Destiny. We have a motion and a second.
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item number 2 on our agenda, the approval of financial reports. In our packets, we had a complete package of financial reports, the bill payment listing and bill listing, credit card detail, budget versus actual, statement of activities, and statement of financial position. I hope you all enjoyed those 86 pages as much as I did. Laura, do you have anything to add to the financial report or any comments?
I just know that Emma's been working to consolidate our accounts and make things more streamlined and easy to use. So I'm excited to find out about number 3 on the agenda later today.
Terrific. Thank you. Emma, do you have anything to add to your written report? Thank you. Questions from the trustees? All right. I have just one on the budget versus actual. We had about $331,000 in grant funding compared to $90,000 for the budget. Can you talk a little bit more about what's there?
Can you hear me now? So we had a $250,000 capital.
$200,000 capital grant from the Meridian Library Foundation in support of, okay, of Orchard Park. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any further questions on the financial reports? Or I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Well, I move to approve financial reports as presented.
Thank you, Destiny.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Jeff. Further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item number 3, the closing of the First Interstate Bank HRA account as was detailed in our bits. We have moved to a different provider and the provider is now housing the funds that we formerly housed for the employee HRA account. So we were holding the money at First Interstate. It's now being held by the provider on our behalf, so there's no longer a need for this account. Anything?
Madam Chair, this is a procedural piece to clean up our bank accounts so that we don't have an extra account that we are no longer using.
I like streamlining. I'd entertain a motion, or if there's further questions.
I move we close the First Interstate Bank account as outlined in our agenda.
Thank you, Jeff.
Second.
Thank you, Destiny. Further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item number A, which is to approve a letter of intent to submit a grant to the Idaho Commission for Libraries for Facilities and Capital Improvement Funding. Nick, do you have anything to add here?
So this is the letter of intent to be able to write the grant proposal. This is funding that has been provided by the federal government to the state to improve capital projects and facilities for libraries, and is being funneled through the Idaho Commission for Libraries. There's a 3-tier grant program. They have to kind of do some timeline pieces here to be able to get us working on it, but the funds have to be released by the state. The money's already there from the federal government. They just have to be allowed to use the funds. We would apply for the Tier 3 grant to help us offset the cost of the Orchard or the South Branch project.
Marvelous. Thank you. Questions from the trustees? Go ahead, Jeff.
Do you have an amount in mind?
It can go up to 500,000. We would most likely put in for the full the max amount.
And
I don't know that what they would, depending on how much the responses they get from across the state, that they might not be able to fund that full amount, but we will most likely submit our grant proposal for that full amount.
Okay. And I would assume other libraries are doing the same. They'd be foolish not to.
It depends on what they're doing. If they have a small capital project or facility project, let's say their hot water heater went out, they might only need, $1,000 to $5,000, and they'd be in the lower tier. They aren't necessarily building a new facility or a new addition to their facility like we are, or having a major capital improvement. Like if you were to replace the entire HVAC system in a large building or something of that nature. So there are the 2 tiers because each library is at different places. Some of the libraries in our state are a quarter of the size of this room that we're in right now. And so their needs are significantly different than ours. So I would imagine there will be a good grouping of libraries in each tier group.
Thank you.
Further questions? Or I'd entertain a motion to approve the letter of intent to submit a grant request as outlined.
I move to approve the letter of intent to submit the grant as outlined.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Destiny. Further comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to item number 4, the director's report. We have the director's report in our packets, the written report, and as well as the written departmental reports. Nick.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll keep it fairly brief. We are continuing to wrap up the final 10 improvements at the Orchard Park branch. We are delayed with a few materials that we are waiting for from the subcontractors, and we do not have final occupancy, but we do have temporary occupancy. The temporary occupancy from the city of Meridian allows us to move in our furnishing and equipment, and so furniture has begun to arrive from the distributors, and we are actively getting those items into the facility. We are also going through and hiring the library assistants and the pages for that branch. And so there are a number of openings that have been posted on our website recently, and continue to go through that process. The interviews for those positions will begin relatively soon, and we'll be able to get them onboarded and trained at both Orchard Park and at our other locations to learn the various aspects of the jobs. We are targeting, but not locked in 100% to doing a ribbon cutting on April 28th, which is a Friday, and then doing a having an opening date for that branch on May 1st. Again, this is not 100% locked in. It's contingent on us having final occupancy. We just can't make final decisions until we have that final occupancy and are comfortable with being ready to open and be ready for the public. But we're doing everything we can to work on the pieces that we have control over, and hoping that those final pieces get in to finish the tenant improvements in that building. It's looking great, and we're excited to show it to the public. We had a meeting with Brighton regarding the South Branch project, and we have some direction on moving forward with that project. I feel much more comfortable with where we're at on that. However, we do not have any details that are ready to proceed with at this time. There's still a lot of structural pieces that we have to work out with Brighton and our legal financing teams. So more on that to come in the following meetings, but needless to say, we are moving in a much better direction than we were last month at the meeting. And I'm much more hopeful in the direction and viability of that project as we have envisioned it. So, yeah, I did reach out to MSR, which is our architect firm that we have a master service agreement with for our capital projects, and talk to them about the master facility plan that we discussed in January. They provided me with a quote, not a quote per se, but the services would not exceed for a master facility plan of $48,000. And they provided input on what that would entail, who it would involve, and why it would be important. I just received this the other day, so I will have to get this readied for you for the next board meeting, but just wanted to let you know that I do have some initial information on that discussion from last month. One of the pieces that I'm still researching a little bit, but in my conversations with MSR, is that the master facility plan document and planning is something that was written into the original master service agreement that we signed with them as an add-on to that original agreement for capital projects. So it would streamline that process from what we had briefly talked about last month. And then I believe Trustee Cummings had asked about the staffing and our staffing levels. I was able to pull the stats from today. So a real-time number for you. We are currently at 52 full-time and 34 part-time. And those are both of those numbers are permanent employees. We also have 2 temporary part-time employees that are working at the Meridian History Center to digitize the collection. Those temporary positions do end at the end of this calendar month, and we are able to hire that position as one permanent position. So we were able to carve out some room in our staffing model to allow us to continue that project with a library funded position. So there are a number of changes as we go, trying to meet both current and future needs. So the future numbers are a little fluid as we embrace some of the structural staffing changes that we need to make sure that we're as lean as possible and still meeting the needs of the district.
Madam Chair, Nick?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Is the potential full-time or potential employee position, is that basically going to be a library historian?
It is not a historian or a librarian level position. It is a technician.
Okay.
So their job is to digitize content
Okay.
that is in the collection that we took over from the city of Meridian. There's a large backlog of items that we are going through cataloging and digitizing as we can. It's a multi-year project, but our goal is to make that collection more accessible to the community and be able to help share the community's history with everyone, so that it's not only accessible to the people that used to be able to show up for a few hours a day throughout the week. So we're working on expanding those opportunities, but first we have to get it all ready to go.
And this is not the first level of the city hall. Is
It is.
That's okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Correct. So I believe that was a year and a half, 2 years ago. Time is not my friend today.
It might
But
be even longer, yeah.
It's been a little while. It's been a project in the works. We've received a few grants. We updated the user experience of going into the History Center. So it is much more curated and user-friendly to go in and see. We have content that has been put on poster boards, and we have been able to get into the basement and start digitizing all of the things that are in the basement storage. And so there's a lot of good historical documents and artifacts that we are excited to share with the public.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. And Nick, I'm just going to say for the record that in light of House Bill 666 last year not passing, becoming law, I'm glad to hear that we don't have 80 criminals on the personnel payroll.
Yes. And I will mention, in light of that, there is a new House bill that we are monitoring, and seeing how that progresses through the House. It was read on Monday morning in the House State Affairs Committee as an RS, and has now been printed as a bill to proceed through the State Affairs Committee and potentially to the House for full vote. And largely it is reminiscent of House Bill 666 from last year, with the major change being that it does not possess the criminal charges against a librarian, but does create a system of challenges from any individual for up to $10,000 per item that is listed in their complaint. So I don't have any more information than what's been out there in the news.
Nick and Madam Chair.
Go ahead, John.
Thank you for bringing that up. As I've been reviewing this, I think that House Bill 139 does have points of merit as far as definitions and things that are going into reasonable terminology. I think what's important is line 27 through 38 that talks about policy requirements. And I think as the trustee board, we should absolutely be monitoring this closely and potentially make it an agenda item in the future if the bill progresses to become law. As the public is aware, we comply with all laws in the state of Idaho. And I think that there are certainly some policy or implementation things we could do to comply with the law if it does pass. I'm not sure where it's going to end up, but I think it would be responsible of the board to make an agenda item to potentially discuss ways to implement or comply with the law if it does pass. And
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, and for what it's worth, it is the petition that was also introduced at the county level. I think it's I'd like to go on the public record and respond to. Let's start off with the very first thing. In the concerned citizens letter to the Ada County Commissioners, the very first item speaks to the entire basis of merit. Whereas the Meridian Library District and Trustee Board has consistently refused to provide financial transparency to the taxpayers of the Meridian Library District, even after multiple requests. And it goes on and on and on. Correct me if I'm wrong, the financial transparency component of this library district is on the World Wide Web at mld.org/reports in its entirety for the World Wide Web to parse and review. And we are acting in a completely transparent manner. Is that a true statement?
I might jump in. I would certainly agree that that is a true and accurate statement. This specific petition is not on our agenda this evening, so I would discussion back to our agenda specifically. As we learn. As we learn more from the county tomorrow and in the coming days, we'll have more to say to the community as well as a discussion here in our meeting. And in reference to House Bill 139, if I would also agree that should this bill pass and become law, the policy requirements would likely require some significant changes to how we operate this library and should we get to that point, we'll definitely have in-depth discussions, but I think we could expect the library operations to look very different and some significant restrictions, I think, on our services, but we will discuss that more in a future agenda.
Sorry to hijack the agenda.
No problem. Thank you. Okay. Other questions for Nick? Or comments? Go ahead, Destiny.
I'm just looking at the bullet point that talks about coffee with legislators event, with the Chamber of Commerce. Is the one that MLD is hosting here in this room really at 6:30 a.m.?
It is.
All right. Thank you.
I will be.
I was hoping that was a typo.
I was hoping that as well. But no, it is a chamber event that they host every other Friday during the legislative session. It is part of the Meridian Chamber of Commerce's, I'm going to get it wrong, but their Government Affairs Committee. And they host these coffee with the legislator events for the chamber community and the community at large to be able to listen to what is happening in the State House from our local representatives. And they host these events at different businesses and organizations throughout the town that are members of the chamber. And they asked us if we would host one of the events, and I said yes, and then they told me I had to be here and be awake at 6:30, and I questioned whether we would do it, but we are doing it. So I hope to see you all here as well.
Yes.
But it's a great time for us all to be able to hear directly from the representatives in our area on the work that they are doing in the State House.
Well, great. I appreciate your willingness and staff's willingness to get up that early, and I will, in solidarity, also show up. Thank you.
Thank you, Destiny. I intend to be here as well. My plan is to just stay up all night. Yeah. Other questions, comments? I had just a couple of comments to to add, not really questions, but I just wanted to call attention to one of the departmental reports from, I think it was Jason's report, and shout out the materials services team that Jason mentioned, getting ready for Orchard Park, processing the new materials for that collection. Of course, materials services is doing all of their regular tasks to add materials to our collection at our existing locations, and then adding that on top. You know, not only with construction and with tours and with logistics and all of those things, but all of the staff efforts that are going into bringing that branch to this community. It's phenomenal. And I just want to take a moment to shout out the staff and say, we see you and appreciate you. And I know there's so much excitement in the community about Orchard Park. That is the number one question that I get lately is, when does it open? So we really look forward to that.
Madam Chair, I had two other pieces, if I could.
Yeah.
The first off, I just wanted to share that we have had an outpouring of support over the last several months, but especially over the last few days, and that those letters, emails, and calls of support have been flooding into staff and myself over the past few days, and just want to let you all know that our community does see and value what we are doing, and they are asking how they can help and be involved in everything that goes forward. So we do have, you know, a contingent that is loud, that is not in favor of what we deliver to the community, and we have an even louder group of supporters who value what our library and what libraries in general provide to our community. And so I just want you all to know that there are a lot of people who support what we do and what we bring to the table. And then switching gears, I had a question for you all that I would ask you to email me if you have input on this, so that I understand a little bit of what you would like to see different about the departmental board reports that we provide to you each month. If there's any stylistic changes or content changes that you would like to see from us. So not to make it a discussion point tonight, but something that we can continue to work on. We won't be able to get everything perfect necessarily in the next month, but we're trying to improve the experience for you and for the public as we go forward. So any feedback that you have would be warmly welcomed.
Thank you. Other comments? I'm just going to call out a couple more things from the departmental reports. In the outreach report from Audra, she talked about home delivery, and I found those statistics really interesting and useful. 25% of the users of the home delivery service are over the age of 65, and 88% of the books that we bring to patrons are from the adult collection. So I just think that's a great reminder about the different kinds of folks in our community that our library serves. We are not merely serving young children, and the innovative ways that the library has developed to meet the needs of those citizens, right? We had, you know, stories from patrons talking about working weird hours and other reasons that they can't physically come into the library, so that home delivery has been a great addition to the services that we offer. And it just really makes me sad that this, you know, under the proposed legislation, those are the kinds of services that we would have to make some pretty significant restrictions on to comply with the policy directives in that legislation. And you know, we've added services, we've increased our services to the community. We're meeting the needs of folks that have not been able to access the library for a variety of reasons. And I hate to see that come off the table. Similarly, I'd love to see those program numbers coming back. You know, we really limited programs during the pandemic, and seeing those build up. So 83 programs for children and teens with more than 3,000 attendees. We had one parent come from Idaho City to attend because there aren't programs in her area. We had 90 attendees for a children's program at Silverstone. If you're unfamiliar with Silverstone, it's hard to get 90 people in there. And they had to split that into two to accommodate demand. So just a huge demand and huge levels of participation in our children and teen programs. And again, heartbreaking to me to take those services off the table to comply with with policy. I mean, obviously it's board decision on what those policies are, but that's what's going around in my mind about where we would need to be. So. Anything else on that happy note? All right, that brings us then to item number 5 on our agenda, the future agenda items. Nick has already mentioned, we'll talk further about master facility plan at a future agenda. From the Unbound report, Basil talked about, what's my notes? The business librarian working on becoming a certified entrepreneurial library. Found that very intriguing. I'd love to hear more about that from the business librarian in the future and how the Meridian business community would benefit from that designation. Other agenda items from staff or trustees?
Madam Chair, can we get an update on Leisure Lane, the paving out there?
Yes, we can. We are working on getting some quotes, and I will have some good information on what our options are or what is planned at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Other things? Laura, anything to add? All right, then. That brings us to the end of our agenda. It is 7:31 and we are adjourned.